Empezamos el día de hoy con la intervención de Pablo de Castro, al que seguramente muchos de vosotros ya conoceréis. Él sabéis que es bibliotecario, promotor del acceso abierto en la Universidad de Strathcly y trabaja también en comunicaciones académicas de investigación. Tiene una experiencia en la promoción del acceso abierto para la investigación y una larga carrera. Ha publicado múltiples trabajos académicos sobre el uso de los identificadores persistentes y ha colaborado en proyectos internacionales. Además, participa activamente en el desarrollo de políticas y mejoras prácticas para facilitar la difusión del conocimiento científico. Está vinculado a euroCRIS y, bueno, pues ahora iremos conociendo más en detalle sus propuestas durante la presentación.
Hola, buenos días. Good morning. Gracias por la invitación, Beatriz, y al equipo de la Biblioteca de la UNED. Un placer estar aquí. I think I'm going to do my presentation in English, if that's okay. I have a round table later, towards the end of today's session, that I think will be in Spanish. I was saying I will do this presentation in English and the roundtable afterwards at 1:30, I think, will be in Spanish. So I think the slides are up already. I will be talking kind of on behalf of both euroCRIS, this non-profit association based in the Netherlands, to promote open research information and standardized research information through the SERIF data model, and also on behalf of my university, Strathcly Uni in Glasgow, where much of these practice that euroCRIS promotes is carried out. So this is, in a nutshell, what I will be talking about this morning, starting by defining what CRIS systems, current research information systems. This is why one of the reasons I'm speaking in English. Many of the technical terminology is in English anyway. What CRIS systems are for, the SERIF data model, the Common European Research Information Formats data model, that underpins the way the research information is stored in CRIS systems, system interoperability, also human interoperability, which is as important as technical interoperability, a snapshot of the CRIS landscape in Spain, and then how this infrastructure, it's very nice that William will be speaking after me, because he will be talking about repositories. And CRIS systems and repositories are very close to each other as infrastructure bits and pieces. So how CRIS systems are used, this will mostly be a Strathcly approach to support open access, to support open science at the university, and then finally some conclusions. I will start with what CRIS systems are and what their objectives are. I'd like to start with a snapshot with an example for our kind of recently published journal article. We had yesterday an example of La ciencia se nos pudre, I think it was a quote from Eva. This is a different sort of example. As you can see, it's an investigation on who funded the research behind the COVID vaccine jointly produced and distributed by Oxford University and AstraZeneca, the pharma company. So this would be a different kind of example for La ciencia nos salva el día. Arguably, there are far more examples for this sort of success from research than for the malpractice that Eva was describing yesterday. And this, I mean, it could make sense to try and keep this in mind when defining new research assessment frameworks in order not to throw away the baby with the bathwater. So a couple of interesting things about this paper. First, the corresponding author there is from the Netherlands, which is interesting. She's at the medical center at the University of Amsterdam. All the rest of the authors are British, are at least affiliated with UK universities. The lead author is in the Netherlands, which is, yeah, again, interesting when you're looking into the funding, the research funding streams into a unit, the Jenner Institute, where this COVID vaccine was produced at the University of Oxford. And then the other very interesting outcome of this paper or conclusion is that they tried to collect the information on the project. So this is all about return of investment for the funding for research. So that it's 20 years for many funding agencies, the European Commission, remarkably, the British government, the Wellcome Trust, the Gates Foundation, many different funders funding research on this vaccine, on this kind of basic research that would eventually result in this vaccine. The authors complain that there is not enough transparency about the funding. They had to file freedom of information requests to the University of Oxford in order to collect information on what projects had been funded there that would eventually result in this vaccine. I mean, it's a really interesting insight they have. They say, okay, we can find what the funders were. So we can find the Wellcome Trust, the UK Research and Innovation funding this work on vaccines. We cannot find how much money they put into specific projects. We cannot find the grant numbers. And the way they did it is they downloaded all the publications in the last 20 years before the vaccine was produced, and they tried to analyze the funding acknowledgements over there. So with regard to what I'm talking about today, this is to say that this information should be kept in an institutional research information system. So there shouldn't be any freedom of information request needed to collect that information from the outside, because this is part and parcel of what open science means, to make all the information openly available in order for anybody to be able to collect it and analyze it. So with regard to current research information systems, there's this Wikipedia page only in English defining these databases to store, manage, and exchange contextual metadata to describe, to comprehensively describe the research activity that is typically carried out at an institution. So this would be an institutional CRIS, or perhaps funded by a specific funder. There is a very nice gateway to research funder CRIS in the UK, collecting all the information on projects funded by the UK Research and Innovation, with all the people involved, with all the budgets, all the grant numbers, abstracts, publications, so everything connected to each other, every research entity connected to each other, and providing a very thorough snapshot of the research funded by the UKRI in this case. The European Commission also has CORDIS, which is sort of similar for EU-funded projects. The data model underpinning, this is also highlighted on the slide, underpinning any CRIS systems as a rule is this SERIF, Common European research information format. I will show you a snapshot of the data model. It's a complex data model, but also very comprehensive. And this allows the information to be standardized and exchanged and aggregated across systems. This is critical, because having the information for one institution is great, but it's not enough. If you want to look into a specific subject for research, you would need to pull together all the input, and this is typically done at a national level or national CRIS systems or at a regional level. And then you need this interoperability based on the data model. There's a double function for these platforms, for these research information management systems. The first one is providing visibility. This is kind of the open science side, or the clearest open science side of CRIS systems. It's about showcasing, showing to the outside world what what research is being done, by whom, funded by what projects, resulting in what outputs, publications, data sets, PhD students, you name it, anything, instruments and facilities used to provide support to that research, to collect the data sets that underpin the publications. So all these different entities can be and should be made openly available. There's a second function there, which is the internal analysis. So there is a lot of information in these systems that the management at institutions can typically use to make decisions, evidence-based decision making. It's the buzzword. So if you want to buy new equipment, you need to know what it is you have, how it's being used. If you want to hire new researchers, new staff, you can tell, I don't know, the productivity by a specific department at the university. All that information is there. There's a lot of economic information as well, income from research projects. It's all in there as a rule. Not everything is public. This bit for decision making tends to be hidden. You don't need to tell people how much you're spending on APCs, for instance, even if the information is typically there as well. These are, again, in a nutshell, the main uses CRIS systems are applied to. So research assessment, mostly internal, research administration, so the proposals, writing a proposal across departments, for instance, with the involvement of the institutional research office. It's done by the CRIS. This is another bit that is not public. It becomes public when the project gets funded, if it gets funded. And then you start having the early metadata for that, which will be reused along the project life cycle. You have the open science implementation, which is what I will mostly be talking about today. So monitoring every single publication, every single data set, working paper, you name it, it's all in there. And then finally, this business intelligence bits, which I wouldn't know how to translate in Spanish, actually. If you want to know what companies you are collaborating with, in what economic sectors, funded by whom, resulting in what, all the information is there as well. So that is really useful. At Strathcly, we have a lot of collaboration with pharma industry, and you can look into that and see who is working with whom. There's lots of postdoc students that end up working with Glasgow or with AstraZeneca, and you can trace how all these people are being trained by the teams, and this is arguably a very relevant input from research to society. So I'm going to be a bit quicker now because there's quite some ground to cover. So again, the serif data model underpinning all these CRIS systems and enabling this system interoperability is here. So you can see all these squares on the slide are research entities. and all of them are connected to each other. The three core entities, as they're called, are the ones in green background. So it's project, person, typically researcher, and organization, typically the affiliation. But it can be a funder, for instance, that is also an organization. And then around that, these are the core ones, all interlinked with each other. Around those, you have the publications, the equipment, there's any kind of research-related activity is there. For instance, yesterday, when discussing Quora and research assessments, there was a mention to kind of lots of activities that are not currently being taken into account or not too much. It's all in there, citizen science, dissemination, engagement with the media, you name it, it's all in there. I mean, the data model allows the information to be included in there. And CRIS systems, so euroCRIS is there on the left-hand side of the slide. Its mission is to promote collaboration within the research information management community and to advance interoperability through SERIF. We do events twice a year, membership meetings and CRIS conferences, and there's a kind of ongoing discussion on the key role that CRIS systems could have in providing new indicators for research assessment, because all the research activity peer-reviewed, organizing conferences or events, lots of things that researchers do that are normally not taken into consideration, because it's the publications, the Q1, Q2, whatever, which is at the top of the assessment criteria. So yeah, there's been interesting presentations. There's a repository for euroCRIS where all these presentations are kept. So technical interoperability tends to be a big topic with regard to SERIF. If everything is standardized in terms of the data model, you can easily bring together information from different systems or exchange information. So the idea being behind all these CRIS systems that the information is typed in once only and then reused. If you need to report to your funder and you're a researcher, you need to report to the European Commission, what publications, what data sets, are they open, and so on and so forth. And you have already created a record for those in your institutional system. What's the point in forcing researchers to do it again for the EC and again for the UKRI and again for the ORCID profile? So the idea is that everything can seamlessly flow the information into the different systems. On top of that, or underpinning that technical interoperability, is the social or the human interoperability, as it's also called. So CRIS systems typically have a CRIS manager, but you can see how wide the collection of departments or units within an institution is that need to collaborate in order to run these systems. Because there's a lot of work around that. The library has a lot to do, and this is what I will mostly focus on later. But finance, all the economic information goes in there, human resources, the researchers, the information on who is working for an institution comes from HR, IT, the project management office, the research office, the management, and then at the bottom, the researchers who will typically feed the information in the CRIS. This is the internal technical interoperability. All the systems, this is a Strathcly snapshot. We have Pure as our institutional CRIS systems. This is the software solution. But what I'm describing here is good for any software solution. It's just my example from Strathcly Uni. You have on the top half all the institutional systems that feed information into the CRIS, and on the bottom half all the systems that collect information from the CRIS, including Strathprint's repository. So all the metadata are pulled from the CRIS and the full text as well for open access implementation purposes. But other funder portals, Research Fish is the name of the UK Research and Innovation reporting portal for researchers. All these, as I said, should be interconnected. And we call the CRIS system the one-stop shop for researchers. Researchers typically don't know that there is such a thing as a repository. They just deposit in the CRIS everything, which is closed, so they don't need to worry about things getting out there too early. And then the library validates everything. The library is a little bit the gatekeeper for the information. We know when a specific bit of information can be released. That was the internal interoperability. There is also an external technical interoperability, which typically works for national and regional CRIS. And this is what I described. If you are the source of truth for the information on researchers because you're hiring them, so it's the university that knows who is working in what capacity for them, typically the information should flow bottom up to feed, for instance, a national portal or kind of a ministry portal from the institutions upwards to an aggregation where duplicates are removed and so on. And then if the funded projects are awarded by a national level agency, that's the source of truth. And then it flows downwards, top down, into the institutional CRIS system. So there's a kind of double direction information exchange between national/regional research information systems and institutional ones. This is an interesting, all this happens thanks to the standardization. The serif model, anything that allows the metadata schemas to be common for all systems. Otherwise, it's a nightmare to exchange information. This is an interesting workflow for research information exchange because it could also apply to European university alliances, like the one we heard about yesterday, this Open EU alliance of open universities across Europe. In this case, it would not be a national regional CRIS, it would be an alliance CRIS, where you would have at the bottom the repository for the Open Universiteit in the Netherlands and the Open University in Milton Keynes in England, and UNED and Oberta Catalunya and so many others. All of them have repositories. It would be a question of having a kind of top aggregation of those repositories of the content to showcase the strength of the alliance as a team. This is something that other alliances are already exploring. It can be a CRIS, it can be a repository, it doesn't really matter. I would argue that CRIS systems are better because you can show the expertise and you can show the people. If you have the information, the profiles, the expertise, again, it's more comprehensive. The projects highlight the projects that the partners are running together, but a repository is as good as that. You will focus on publications. If you have a repository, it's not difficult. It's just being aware of your strength as an alliance. So that's an idea I'd like to leave with you. This is an example for a regional CRIS. In this case, this is from Flanders, the Flanders Research Information Space, FRIS, with the entities they have collected at a regional level in Belgium. You can see there, this is the set of research entities, the researchers, the organizations, the projects, publications, patents, infrastructures, equipment, facilities, and data sets, all pulled together from the different universities, research centers that feed FRIS, that feed the regional portal. There is, 100-page document explaining how the information exchange workflows work. So what metadata elements are required for each of the research entities. And whenever a Flemish institution wants to become a data provider for FRIS, they have to read those 100 pages and make sure they will provide the information in the required formats. Not very different from Recollector over here or from OpenAir. It's a question of standardizing the way the information is collected and exchanged. There is this very interesting portal in Spain from the ministry. It's called Síguenos. As you can see on the slide, it's a very long URL. I'm not sure I've put it in there. I'd like to highlight these innovation indicators. This is not strictly a CRIS system. You don't have a collection of all researchers working in Spain, where, what projects, but you have other things. It's more like a top-down approach where the ministry has a lot of information and they are making it available openly, a very good kind of open science practice. In this case, if you look at these innovation indicators, they're showing, for instance, how many spin-offs or startups are being launched in Spain from the research institutions or environments. There's a lot of them. There's a very nice analysis by regions, by economic sector, and arguably kind of this is, I would dare saying, this is the future of the economy in the country. It's not tourism, it's this. So it's really good that some system out there is collecting this information. It's a little bit outdated. Arguably, the ministry knows a lot, but it doesn't know all. Arguably, the information should be provided by the institutions themselves. You could collect that information in your CRIS. So tell the researchers, if you've launched a startup, put it in there. This is really valuable as a research indicator for an outcome of research activity, and then feed it to the national portal, and the information will be far more comprehensive than what the ministry is able to collect on their own. There's much more stuff in there. I would invite you to take a look if you don't know this portal. I know patents and how much funding has been invested in what. Really, really good stuff. Kind of this is part of the CRIS landscape in Spain. euroCRIS maintains this DRIS, this Directory of Research Information Systems. You have the URL there. It has nearly 1,500 systems worldwide. If you search, I mean, this is the DRIS map showing where the CRIS systems are mostly. You can see Europe there in red. India is also in red, incidentally, but there are CRIS systems all around the world. This is kind of the European snapshot. Every country has its CRIS infrastructure. And then this is Spain with an example of how when you hover over a given dot on the map, you see what CRIS system, what institution, what URL that dot belongs to. And this is the search in the DRIS for Spain, showing 66 CRIS systems as of today. On the right-hand side of the slides, you have the software solutions. Everyone is obsessed with the software solutions, as you know. It's not that important. The social interoperability is far more important to manage to put together an effective collaboration within the institution across the people who are dealing with this, so that everyone understands what the other teams are contributing. The software solution is, of course, important, but arguably all software solutions, including the open source solutions such as Vivo or DSpace CRIS, are able to provide the functionality, better or worse. So there are 66 of them. Dialnet CRIS is very widespread these days. It's over half, rather 2/3 of the systems in Spain, but you have a very wide collection of systems, of softwares underpinning these CRIS systems in Spain. It's not fully comprehensive because we rely on institutions telling us, we have launched a CRIS, can you please put it into the DRIS? So if you check and your university is not there and you have a CRIS system, there is an online DRIS form on the euroCRIS website where you can send us the minimally sufficient metadata for a new entry to be added in there. There's kind of regional CRIS systems, Portal de la Recerca, Catalunya, it's one of the kind of most inspiring CRIS systems. There is also this one, in terms of regional CRIS systems, this is fairly new. I would say it's perhaps the best CRIS in Spain. It's from Andalusia. It's about health. It's a subject-based CRIS, and you can see again on the slide the sort of information they are collecting across the region. So the organizations, the centers, as they call them, the research groups, researchers, projects, clinical trials, publications, and patents. And then you can see at the bottom of the screenshot, it says reports and data, access the global data for research and innovation in health within the public health system in Andalusia from 2018 to 2023. This is really gold dust. There's a lot of very valuable information, again, on startups launched by academics, collaborations with industry, who is using the equipment, what degree of openness there is around clinical trials. Everything is in there. And then if you have these sort of news as they are happening ever more frequently because of the climate change or whatever, this is the portal where you can find who is doing research on this kind of African virus in the region in order to make sure there is some awareness about who could work to provide a solution for this issue with infections. Same as I was mentioning at the beginning around COVID. It's hospitals in there. It's not just a university. Open Air tends to focus on universities, research centers. Here, because it's health, you have primary care, establishments, you have hospitals, you have a wide range of institutions that are providing the data for this CRIS system. So in terms of the use of CRIS to support open access and open science, this is a bit of a snapshot. It's not. I'm not going into too much detail around this. Starting with Eva Mendez drawing dated 2017 on what open science encompasses. You know what it is, but it's in there. So citizen science is there at the top, but open access, open data, open software, text and data mining. So the CRIS will support some of this, perhaps not all of this or not yet, but it's providing, as I'll show, a fairly comprehensive record of the research activity at an institution. So regarding records for publications, which are critical, these are created by researchers very early on in the process, often before submission. You have statuses for publication records in the CRIS that read in preparation. So they know what they are going to submit. They know the title, the working title, at least for the manuscripts. They know who the authors will be, and you can often see that very early, drop them a line to tell them, hey, depending on where you're planning to submit this, these are your options for open access. Or please make sure you deposit the data sets there as well, if there is a data set. So these records are closed as a rule. Thank you. They're always validated by librarians within the institutional open access teams, and the validation typically includes completing a lot of metadata elements that researchers don't know about or don't know how to add, such as link to funded projects, to data sets, to equipment and facilities, etc. So this is an example. I'm going to go quite briskly through here for a publication. This is a scientific reports paper with date of acceptance. There is a mandate for deposits in the UK connected to the REF, to the Research Excellence Framework, whereby the deposit of the accepted author manuscript, the AAM, is mandatory, no longer than 3 months from acceptance. this is the paper in Scientific Reports. It's an open access paper. This is typically the co-authors. This is a different paper, but I just wanted to show you. This is a collaboration with industry. Actually, you have Scottish Power. You have the last two authors are in our ocean engineering department, but then you have a number of companies, energy companies, typically in Scotland, in Germany. This is the sort of research graph you can analyze to see the academia industry collaboration. Where is it happening? This is the link within the record to the funded project there and to the data set. So all is in there, all is linked to everything else. And this is what allows you to capture that research graph. This is an example for the interlinking of the SERIF entities, in this case projects. We're pulling the thread of the project. This is a Horizon 2020 project in electronic engineering. You have the project information there, including the budget, including the research partners, and then you can check the publications in the CRIS that the researchers have created. As a rule, upon acceptance, typically, or even before, there are 56 papers. It's both articles and conference papers and other things that can be transferred to the CORDIS, to the participant portal at the European Commission. And then you have the data sets as well. Often the data sets are common for different papers, but they are there, and it should also be possible to transfer them to the funders portal. Research facilities is another piece of the research graph where you can pull. This is a hydrodynamics laboratory at Strathcly, and you can search in the CRIS what publications are acknowledging the use of that specific research facility. And you find student theses, and you find articles, and you find data sets. So all is there. And making it openly available is kind of open science at its best. In terms of supporting open access, the read and publish deals are kind of increasingly used by researchers to make their papers go to open access at no cost for them. And there is an example here. There is a database where you can see for a given journal title whether it's covered by any of the read and publish deals that you're running at the university. So we're seeing ever more frequently researchers, especially early career researchers, writing to us and saying, I want to publish this paper. Can you tell me where to submit the manuscript in order to go to open access at no cost, because I have no money? And then they send you 5 titles, and you can tell them these ones are covered by the read and publish agreements. These ones would require payment. So you can tell them and recommend them where to publish, which is arguably really useful. An example of the sort of monitoring we do, this is the Springer Compact, running for nearly 10 years already. There's information on what departments are publishing in what journals. All of that is available for every read and publish agreement that we run. And then you have a bit in the bibliographic record for a publication where you can collect the APC, the money that you're paying for a given publication, so that you can collect the information from the CRIS. Willem mentioned rights retention yesterday. We have an institutional rights retention policy, same as, I don't know, about 30 universities in the UK, meaning that when Gold Open Access is not an option, we apply immediate green, no embargo periods anymore. It has kicked in on the 1st of January this year, and it's fascinating to be able to do it and to talk to researchers about this. I mean, we're forcing researchers in social sciences and humanities to wait 2 years before making their AAM openly available. That's unacceptable. And it's their papers, as Willem mentioned yesterday. So we haven't had any backlash from the publisher so far, knock wood. There is a way to classify the rights retention papers so that we can know what it is we're publishing. It's roughly 100 papers already this year that are being made openly available, the accepted manuscript, the post-print, as it's also called, on day one upon publication, which is arguably good news for the researchers, especially if they cannot follow the gold open access route. The data access statements are also in there. There's a way to collect the information in CRIS systems. This is one example for rights retention, the general one, as we call them. There is the funder rights retention, where the Wellcome Trust or the UKRI impose rights retention as a route. So we're kind of piggybacking on top of the funders' policies. This is Plan S, essentially. Finally, this is, I think, my last slide. A few conclusions. CRIS systems are key instruments to implement open access and open science, particularly from a reporting perspective. So all the information is in there. The library has this comprehensive overview on what's happening where in terms of publications, very early queries from academics saying, can you pay this if I get this manuscript submitted there and it gets accepted? So you build a trust relationship with researchers. If we eventually, at some point in the future, want to tell them to please publish more often in Open Research Europe or in Diamond journals, this trust relationship will be critical, where academics trust the library because we have been counseling them for years. So this ability to see the information is very useful. Some of the main strengths of CRIS systems are summarized there. The closeness in this case is paradoxically useful because researchers are not afraid of depositing kind of very early manuscripts. You need to keep in mind they're building their career on these publications. So if they give you a submitted manuscript that hasn't even been peer reviewed, they need to be sure that this will not be shown because of the kind of priority considerations that Remy mentioned yesterday. Because the library validates everything, it's easy for us to keep track on what is open and what is not open. But they are happy to share to share very early stage outputs with us as a rule. The SERIF data model is critical for allow this research graph to be put together. The interoperability that SERIF makes possible is also critical because, I mean, you would have regional or national portals built on top of the institutional ones. And finally, there are research portals, there are expert finder systems. Typically, if you want to find somebody to collaborate with in the topic, say antimicrobial resistance, you're working in that area, you can see who is an expert at whatever institution you're interested in by looking into the CRIS. And this allows these research collaborations to happen also with industry. If companies are able to see what instruments you have, they may knock on your door for their tests. They want to test their products or whatever. They will knock on your door. Can I use your equipment, please? Which is something that funders who have paid a lot of money for these equipment will be very happy to see. So you will eventually need to report to funders who have paid for the equipment and the facility who is using this equipment. That's it from me. Thank you so much and happy to take any questions now.
Espera, un momento, Reme, para la gente que está online.
I, well, I have two questions. The first one is the pros and cons of using, I've seen you in Strathcly use Pure. Pure is a commercial one. And the pros and cons of using the commercial software for the DRIS. And the second question, and this is more important for me, is that what has been the experience regarding the retention rights policy of your university? Because or how have you implemented? Because I mean, you can see a publisher. Yes, I have this policy, but how?
Thank you for the question. So on the first one, it's a good product. That's my main concern. If we have, so I mentioned the open source solutions, Vivo, DSpace, GRIS. They're not, at the moment, they're not yet as good as Pure is. There was a project in Spain, Hércules, trying to put together a public DRIS system that would be used by all universities. It was CRUE, and a lot of European money to fund for that, to fund that project. Nothing came out of it. This is the issue with. So from a pragmatic perspective, I would rather use a commercial solution. I will make sure it's not a black box. So we have means to make everything open. Arguably, all these publication records are our records. It's our information. Why do we need it to buy from Scopus or from the Web of Science? It's our information. If we were able to find a way to put this information out as a community, this would be, and this is what OpenAlex is about, actually. So I'm fine with the Elsevier product because it's a good product. If there is a better, not all my colleagues are that happy with Pure. If we get to a point where we have a similarly good approach from the public sector, be it open source or otherwise, I'd be more than happy to switch. But for the moment, I'm happy about that. On the rights retention, there is a workflow that all universities in the UK that have an institutional rights retention policy have followed. So you need to notify the publishers officially that you are adopting this policy so that they know. No one typically replies, but you send them the notification and then you start implementing this. You tell your researchers that they can opt out. Willem mentioned yesterday 3 or 4 opt-outs in Tromsø in the first 2 years. We have seen none. No opt-outs. You need to explain to them that the Plan S, the coalition as funders, including the UKRI and the Welcome in the UK plus the European Commission, are all behind this approach. So it's, I mean, the funders' policies. There's nothing the publishers can do about that. They're not happy. Not all of them are happy. But we make sure that researchers know what it is we're doing and why we're doing it. And typically they will be on your side.
And do the researchers tell the publishers at the submission or when they are accepted?
So originally, if you know how rights retention was adopted by coalition as funders, there was a 2-line rights retention statement. For the purposes of open access, the author applies a Creative Commons CC BY license to any manuscript arising from this submission. So this is something they would typically include when they had funded projects by the UKRI, by the Welcome, by the European Commission, or any other coalition as funder that has adopted these policies. Once you have an institutional rights retention policy, that's not needed anymore. It's something we are applying by default. This is Edinburgh Uni pioneering the work. There are presentations online by Theo Andrew, by Dominic Tate, including at Tromsø Uni, explaining how this works in detail and critically providing some information on how many publications they have applied this to in the first year, what license. Sometimes, especially in the social sciences, you know, CC BY is a little bit controversial. So if they want a CC BY and C, it's fine. If they want a CC BY and C and D, it's fine. What we want is the accepted manuscript to be available out there from day one. No embargo period. It's nonsense, the embargo periods.
Thank you. Nice to see that it works.
Yeah, I hope there will be examples in Spain as well, eventually.
No sé si hay alguna pregunta más. ¿Nada? ¿Nadie más quiere intervenir ahora mismo? Vale. De acuerdo. Pues entonces continuamos. Muchas gracias, Pablo.